My husband used the $340,000 I inherited from my grandmother to open his restaurant, and when it finally launched on a Saturday night in March, I found out about it on Instagram. Not from him, not from his mother, from a hashtag. I remember sitting in our apartment in Austin, scrolling through my phone at 9 o'clock at night, still in the work clothes I hadn't changed out of because I'd been on calls until 7, and there it was. His restaurant, all warm lighting and exposed brick and a full dining room, and my husband standing in the center of it in a blazer I'd never seen before, his arm around his brother's shoulder, both of them grinning like they'd just won something. The caption said, "We built this from the ground up. Couldn't be prouder of what we've created." We. I stared at that word for a long time. I want to be honest about something before I tell the rest of this. I am not someone who grew up with money. My grandmother, Nana, she worked as a seamstress for 40 years in a small town outside of San Antonio. She never owned a car newer than 10 years old. She clipped coupons until the week she went into the hospital. When she passed and left me $340,000, money she had quietly saved and invested over decades, dollar by dollar, I cried for 3 days straight, not just because I missed her, because I understood what that money represented. It was her entire life, compressed into a number. I had been with my husband for 4 years when we got married. He was charming and sunny, and he had this dream of opening a farm-to-table restaurant in Austin, which, yes, I know how that sounds in retrospect, but at the time I believed in him. He had worked in kitchens since he was 19. He had real skill, and when Nana passed and I received that inheritance, he sat across from me at our kitchen table, and he asked if I would consider investing in the restaurant. I said I needed time to think. He said, of course. Then his mother called me the next morning. She didn't ask. She told me it was the right decision for the family, that this was how wives supported their husbands, that she and my father-in-law had sacrificed everything for him, and now it was my turn to be part of that. She said, and I remember this exactly because I wrote it down afterward, "Money sitting in an account doesn't mean anything. Money that builds something real, that's what lasts." I was 29 years old. I had just buried my grandmother, and I wanted so badly to believe that I was building something real with my husband. So I said yes. We drew up a basic agreement, or rather, my husband had his brother, who had taken one business law class in college, draft something on his laptop that they printed out and asked me to sign. I signed it. I know how that sounds now. But I was his wife. I trusted him. The document said I was a co-investor with a 40% stake in the business. I didn't think much about what that meant in practice. I assumed it meant we were in this together. What followed was 18 months of my husband running the restaurant project while I worked my full-time job in marketing to cover our rent and living expenses. I want you to understand that clearly. While he spent my grandmother's money building his restaurant, I was the one paying our actual bills, our rent, $2,100 a month in Austin, our car payments, our groceries, every utility, every streaming service, every dinner out. Me. He would come home excited about tile samples and menu tastings and meetings with contractors. I would smile and ask questions and feel proud of him. When he had shortfalls, and there were several, I transferred money from our joint account to cover them. Another $18,000 over the course of that year and a half, beyond the initial $340,000. I did not go to a single contractor meeting. I was not introduced to the vendors. When the restaurant's LLC was officially registered, I found out 3 weeks later, by accident, when I saw paperwork on his desk. My name was not on it. I asked him about it. He said it was a formality. He said he'd handle it. He kissed me on the forehead and told me not to worry. I should have worried. The months leading up to the opening were the first time I noticed the distance. He was busy, I understood that. But there was something else. He started taking calls in the backyard with the door closed. He started coming home later than he said he would, and offering explanations that had too much detail in them, the kind of detail that sounds like someone rehearsed it. One night, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a restaurant I'd never heard of, dated on a night he told me he'd been doing inventory. I didn't confront him. I filed it away in a part of my brain I wasn't ready to open yet. And then March came and the restaurant opened, and I found out on Instagram. I called him immediately. He picked up on the third ring, and I could hear noise in the background. Music, voices, the clatter of a full house. "Are you at the restaurant?" I asked. Yeah, it's the soft opening," he said. "We're just doing a small thing tonight." "You didn't tell me." There was a pause. "I didn't want to stress you out. You've been so busy with work." "My grandmother's $340,000 is in that building," I said. "And you didn't tell me it was opening tonight?" Another pause. Longer. "It's a soft opening. It's just family and close friends. I'll take you properly when we do the real launch, okay? I'll take you on a real night." I didn't say anything for a moment. I was looking at the Instagram photo again. His brother. His two cousins. His mother, standing at the edge of the frame in a dress she'd clearly bought for the occasion. "Who's there?" I asked. "Just family, you know." "I'm your wife," I said. "What am I?" He didn't answer that. He said he had to go. He'd talk to me later. He loved me. And then he hung up. I sat on the couch in our apartment for a long time after that. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I had this cold, clear feeling. The kind that comes when something you've been avoiding finally becomes undeniable. I opened my laptop. I pulled up every document I had related to the restaurant. The original co-investor agreement his brother had typed up. The bank transfer records, all of them, meticulously saved because I am someone who keeps records. The 18 months of transfers from our joint account. The receipt from the jacket. I put all of it in a folder. Then I called my college friend, who had become a business attorney in Dallas. I hadn't called her about any of this before. I'd been embarrassed. I called her that night at 10 o'clock, and she picked up, and I told her everything. She was quiet for a moment when I finished. "Send me everything you have," she said, "tonight." I sent it. The next morning, she called me back. "Okay," she said. "First thing, the agreement you signed has real problems for you, but it's still a document that establishes your financial contribution. Second, the fact that you're not on the LLC is a significant issue, but it's not necessarily the end of the road. Third," she paused. "Is there anything else going on that I should know about? Because I want to make sure I understand the full picture before you decide what you want to do." I told her about the receipt, about the late nights, about the closed-door phone calls. She was quiet again. Then she said, "I think you need to know what you're actually dealing with before you make any decisions, not just about the money." I hired a private investigator 3 days later. I know that sounds dramatic, but my friend was right. I needed to know. I couldn't make a clear-eyed decision about my marriage or my money when I was still guessing. It took 11 days. She had been working as a hostess at the restaurant. She had been there since before the opening. My husband had hired her 6 months ago, right around the time he started taking calls in the backyard. I won't spend too long on this part, not because it doesn't hurt, it does, it still does, but because the affair is almost secondary to what happened next. Or maybe it's that once I knew, something in me shifted completely. I stopped being a wife trying to save her marriage and started being a woman who needed to protect herself. The week after I got the investigator's report, my husband called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Hey," he said, like everything was normal. "I need you to transfer some money to the restaurant account. The linen supplier is asking for the next installment and I'm short." "How much?" I asked. "About $14,000. I let a beat of silence pass. "I'm sorry," I said. "I only do that for close family." There was confusion in his voice. "What are you talking about? We're married." "Well," I said, "you seemed unclear on that at the restaurant opening, so I just want to be consistent." That's not funny. I need this money by Thursday or they're going to pause the contract." "Then you should call someone who can help you," I said. "I hope you find what you need." And I hung up. He called back immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called from his brother's number. I let that go too. Then his mother called. I picked up for her because I wanted to. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she said, But Marcus has a business to run and he needs your support right now. This is not the time to be difficult. I had known this woman for 6 years. I had been to her house for every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every birthday dinner. I had brought casseroles when her husband had knee surgery. I had smiled through every comment she had ever made about my cooking, my career, my decision not to have children yet, the way I decorated our apartment. I want to ask you something, I said. When the restaurant opened in March, were you there? Silence. Were you there? I asked again. That was a small yes or no? Yes, she said. And did it occur to you, I said, that the reason that restaurant exists is because of money my grandmother spent 40 years saving? Did that occur to you even once while you were standing there in your nice dress? She started to say something. I didn't let her. I'm not transferring any more money, I said. To Marcus, to the restaurant, or to anyone connected to either. If he needs $14,000 for his linen supplier, he can find it somewhere else. I hope you enjoy the restaurant. I paid for most of it. And I hung up. What happened next was not a clean, satisfying montage. Real life isn't. There were weeks of difficult conversations and legal filings, and one very terrible night where my husband came home and tried to have a version of an argument that required me to act like I didn't know what I knew. I let him finish. Then I placed the investigator's report on the kitchen counter and I watched his face. He didn't say anything for a long time. I want you to leave tonight, I said. I've already spoken to an attorney. Everything going forward will go through her. He left. The divorce took 7 months. My attorney, not the college friend who referred me to a family law specialist in Austin, was meticulous. She went through every transfer, every document, every record I had kept. The co-investor agreement, flimsy as it was, still established my financial contribution. The fact that I had continued to pay household expenses while my husband ran the restaurant was documented. The fact that my name had been intentionally excluded from the LLC was documented. The settlement wasn't everything I put in. It never is. But it was significant. The restaurant was valued and my contribution was recognized, and I walked away with enough to feel that my grandmother's life's work was not simply handed over and forgotten. There is something I want to say about his mother, because she is not a footnote in this story, even though she would prefer to be. About 2 months after the separation, I received a call from her. Not an apology exactly, more of a repositioning. She said she had always liked me. She said she hoped we could stay close. She said family was complicated. I listened to the whole thing. Then I said, I genuinely wish you well, but I need you to understand something. The night you called me after Nana died and told me that money sitting in an account doesn't mean anything, I believed you. I trusted you, and you used that trust to help your son take the one thing my grandmother left me. I don't think you'll ever fully understand what that cost me. And I don't need you to. But I won't be staying close. I hung up gently that time, not angry, just done. I'm 33 now. I have an apartment in South Austin that I chose entirely by myself. The layout, the neighborhood, the color of the walls. I have a savings account that I built back up. Not to where it was, but growing. I have a therapist I see every other week who helps me untangle the part of me that still, sometimes, wonders how I missed so many signs for so long. My friend from college, the one I called that first night, she and I had dinner last month and she told me she was proud of me. I cried a little, the good kind. I don't regret loving my husband. I don't even fully regret trusting him with my inheritance because I made that choice from a real place, from hope, from love. From wanting to believe that the people closest to me were who I thought they were. Regret is a waste of the lesson. What I know now, that I didn't know then, is that the clearest picture of someone's character isn't in how they treat you when they need you. It's in whether they think of you when they don't. On the night that restaurant opened, when the room was full and the food was going out and everything he had worked for had finally arrived, he did not think of me once. That tells you everything. There's a moment I keep coming back to, not the night I found out about the restaurant, not the conversation with my husband's mother, not even the morning my attorney called with the settlement number. It's smaller than any of those. It's the image of my grandmother at her kitchen table in San Antonio, clipping a coupon from a Sunday circular for 35 cents off a can of soup. She did that her whole life. She saved the way most people breathe, steadily, without thinking about it, because it was just what you did to survive. I didn't protect that money the way she protected it, and for a long time, I blamed myself for that. I thought that what happened to me was a failure of judgment, a failure of caution. But I've come to understand it differently now. What happened was a failure of character, and it wasn't mine. When Marcus asked me to invest in his restaurant, I wasn't being naive. I was being a wife. I was extending the kind of trust that marriage is supposed to require. The problem wasn't that I trusted him. The problem was that he was never trustworthy. And those are two completely different things. One is a flaw in me. The other is a fact about him. It took me a long time to stop confusing the two. What carried me through, and I mean the practical, actual thing that saved me, was that I had kept records. Every transfer, every document, every receipt. Not because I suspected anything, just because I'm someone who pays attention. My grandmother paid attention too. She knew exactly what was in every account, every envelope, every drawer. I think I learned that from her without ever being taught it directly. And in the end, that habit, that quiet, unglamorous habit of paying attention, is what gave my attorney something to work with. It's what gave me a way out that wasn't empty-handed. I think about the version of me that didn't keep those records, that signed the LLC paperwork without asking questions, that took "I'll handle it" as a full answer. That version of me would have had nothing. And she almost existed. There's a version of strength that looks like confrontation, raised voices, dramatic moments, door slamming. That's not what saved me. What saved me was quieter than that. It was the decision, at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night with a glass of water and a laptop, to look clearly at what was in front of me and decide that I deserved to understand it fully. That I was owed the truth about my own life. That clarity, even when it's painful, is always better than the comfortable version of not knowing. I'm not the same person I was at 29, standing in that apartment, scrolling past a photo of a restaurant I had paid for. I'm sharper now. I ask more questions. I read documents before I sign them. I have an attorney I keep on retainer, not because I expect the worst from people, but because I respect myself enough to be prepared. That's not cynicism. That's what it looks like when you actually learn something. My grandmother spent 40 years building something real, dollar by dollar. I lost a portion of it, I won some of it back, and I rebuilt the rest myself. I think she would understand that. I think she would understand that. I think she'd recognize the work in it. The clearest picture of someone's character isn't in how they treat you when they need you. It's in whether they think of you when they don't. On the night that restaurant opened, when everything Marcus had worked for had finally arrived, he did not think of me once. That told me everything, and once I knew, I didn't look away.